Hello. Okay, I can hear myself now.
Okay.
Okay.
Let me know if it happens again.
Okay.
We should be good. But we're in a weird time right now. We keep hoping that the weird times will come to an end, and they're not coming to an end. And I think people that stand up and have courage and push back against a system, like, we need to hear those stories, we need to share it, and we need to unify. And I think you are a prime example of doing that in your profession. Because, like, all walks of life, like, I did it as a police officer, we've seen some soldiers do it, but overall, I feel like most people are just going along to get along. They don't want to ruffle feathers, and they're behaving in a way that's probably not congruent with how they feel in their heart, but they just don't want to push back. So anytime I can get a I pushed back story on the show, I want to shine a spotlight on it and let people know. Because, like I always say, courage is contagious. You know, people see people standing up for what they believe to be true. Then that little voice in their head's like, maybe I could do that. You know?
Totally.
So take me back, like, as far back as you want to go. You can talk about kindergarten if you want to, but I just want to hear about, like, who you are, where you came from, and then what led to your viral moment, because that's what we share in common.
I say that you are the police officer version of me, because I called out corruption in the news and got fired for it. You got fired for very similar reasons, but I mean, I went to one of the best journalism schools in America at Syracuse, and journalism has always been really important to me. And when bosses hired me, I would always say, well, I'm the one who got into it for the right reasons. They say, oh, really? Why is that? And then I just tell them, you know, I'm here to be a part of the actual free press that puts the people first, informs them with the information that empowers them to preserve their liberty. And I just wanted to be a part of that, something special we have in the U.S. of such a remarkably free press and an opposition to censorship up until the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, I always thought, you know, I want to be in the press if there was ever a time that came where tyranny tried to take over, or, you know, I would want to be the one pushing back and informing people despite a desire to censor certain things in the government. And what do you know? It happened 9 years into my career.
Okay, that was going to be my first question, was how long had you been doing that? So you were a journalist for 9 years then, huh?
Yeah. Well, actually 8 years into my career is when it first started happening. 2020 was, I had been doing news for 8 years. I was with Fox for 4 years, or for 3 years at that point. And that's when the narrative really started to ratchet up, where the narrative started to separate from the truth a little bit.
And anybody that has any intuition or the ability to critically think saw this for what it was, in my opinion, pretty early on. Like, things weren't making sense almost out of the gates, you know?
Right.
How long was it into the pandemic before people in your industry started saying, like, wait a minute, what's going on here?
Ridiculously early in the pandemic. It is almost pretty much exactly 2 years ago that we were focused in on the primaries, early voting. I was getting this evidence of voting anomalies, double votes, voter registrar just registering anyone, people who are not supposed to be registered. And I was covering that, and it was alarming, leading up to a very important election. And I remember day after Super Tuesday, I had this stack of evidence that was really glaring, that showed there's not really, people aren't really honoring elections in this jurisdiction, as far as a lot of anomalies. And the boss dismissed it all and said, we are all hands on deck for coronavirus now, because the first case just happened.
So was it, did you feel like at that time they're like trying to shut you up about the election, or was it just like, hey, we want your focus elsewhere?
Well, I just thought it was this is not something targeted me. It was at the entire news industry. I thought it was a really interesting timing that it for all news outlets, it was suddenly all hands on deck immediately after Super Tuesday. And but what I saw right away was this heightened hysteria that wasn't keeping it real with the viewers. And the one thing I noticed was we were not reporting recovery rates. So this is a brand new illness that nobody knows about. Like, can you recover from it?
Yeah.
Or is it permanent? And they're not reporting recovery rate, yet they're talking about flattening the curve. Well, the curve's never going to flatten if you don't factor in recoveries. And I brought that up, and we had a heated discussion in a morning editorial meeting saying, we need to keep it real with people and let them know, that weeks in, like, thousands of people are recovering as quickly as they're catching it. And finally, I put up enough pushback in the newsroom that finally, after several weeks, they started reporting recovery rate too. Mm-hmm. But it was just like, what is this? What is this desire to make this more hysterical than it is?
Well, in I don't know if you're going to have any insight on this, but at what point did the free press start to take direction from political powers? Because it felt like that was exactly what was going on. There were certain political players that wanted this to be reported a certain way, wanted certain information out there and other information withheld. And what was the incentive for these major media outlets to just fall right in lockstep and kind of perpetuate whatever political agenda was being pushed? That
is an ongoing culture that's been in the newsroom for many moons, in all of the newsrooms, of taking public health officials or any public officials' word as gospel, not questioning it, not questioning their intentions. And so that's what we were supposed to do. And so then a few months into the pandemic, then it was when, I'm based in Houston, and Dr. Stella Emmanuel, the African doctor from Houston, speaks in a press conference on the steps of the Supreme Court about how much success she's having with hydroxychloroquine. And it goes viral like never before and gets censored like never before.
Was that because, who knows what the actual reasoning was at the highest level, but do you think that's because Trump showed support for that?
Yeah, he retweeted her.
That's what I'm saying. And so anything that Trump touched, they had to make turn to shit for a while there.
Yeah.
And
so my TV station president said this. We talked the next day in our morning editorial meeting. Why are we seeing this censorship across social media like never before? Our own newsroom was baffled by it. And the station president was like, yeah, I think it has to do with Trump. The fact that he retweeted her. So
because they were on a cutthroat mission, do or die at all costs. To just everything he did, they had to paint him in a picture looking like an idiot. Yeah.
So nevertheless, they sent me out to her clinics, and she's based in Houston.
Okay.
I was assigned to go cover, kind of verify if what she's saying is true. So I talked to some of her patients. Yeah, there was a guy in there getting a follow-up after he had recovered from COVID, being treated with hydroxychloroquine, and he had rave reviews for her. And it was a legitimate clinic she had there, and so I covered that, and then 15 minutes before air, the bosses say, hey, we need you to talk a lot about how she believes in witch doctors and demons. And I was like, excuse me?
So God, it's very similar to my story, because it's like it somewhere along the line, there was somebody that interjected and said, hey, let's use this interview to discredit her instead of giving her any validity.
Yeah, I was like, well, what does her, religious beliefs have to do with treatment for COVID?
Yeah, exactly. Nothing. But they immediately want to find something to discredit her and make people think, oh, she's a fucking lunatic.
Yeah.
And maybe, let's say she is a lunatic, right? Let's say she does believe some wacky spiritual shit that most of us would look at and be like, oh, what's that all about? But if she's providing medical treatment that's working, one has nothing to do with the other, you would think, right?
Right. So it was clear to me, okay, we're trying to smear her before we even do the first story on her. And I actually, one of my very best friends is an African immigrant. So I called her up. She gets her mom on the phone and I'm like, so what's the deal? Is witchcraft a thing in Africa? And they're like, absolutely. That's like extremely normal. Like that's their religion in certain African countries. And so I just told my boss and now we're like 5 minutes from air. And I'm like, hey, I'm not comfortable being used to smear an African religion, like needlessly, when I'm supposed to be talking about COVID treatment.
100%.
So these strange things were happening. So I did mention a little blurb about, there's controversy regarding her religion. I said something about that at the end. So that was at the 5:00 news. So they reworked my whole coverage at 5 and edited things in and put it in the 9:00 news. And before the story starts at all, they do there's this whole thing about her weird spiritual beliefs. So they reworked it to propagandize it at 9 because I didn't propagandize it enough at 5.
That's so fucking infuriating. And you want to know what's crazy too is that these are the same fucking people that want to always point the finger and cause racial tensions. And if you don't fall in lockstep with everything they say, it's because you're a racist. Yet here they are demonizing an African woman for her cultural and spiritual beliefs that are rooted in her African culture.
Literally demonizing.
I mean? Yeah.
You believe in demons. Yeah.
It's fucking insanity.
Yeah. So, but the biggest takeaway that day, that was unnerving. And it wasn't the first time that they've tried to, propagandize a story and make me do it. But the biggest thing to me was just observing all that censorship. So many people's Facebook pages got locked up and posts got deleted and people got warnings and all these things because they were trying to stop the sharing of that information in its tracks. And I just said, this is a dangerous precedent in our country that we have this social media monopoly that pretty successfully shut down her posts, any posts in regards to her. They set an algorithm. In fact, when I posted a little teaser on Facebook saying, hey, coming up at 5, I'm going to be digging into who this woman really is after she went viral. And I'll be going to her clinic. So tune in at 5. Facebook zaps that post. Facebook got rid of my teaser, a generic news teaser. And it was clear, none of these social media monopolies wanted people to know anything about her, which is very strange. Let the free sharing of information happen, and then let the journalists go in and figure out what the truth is and help inform the public. But suddenly,
and then let the public form their own fucking opinion.
Right.
That's what the press is supposed to be about.
Yeah.
Who do you think? Because you said your boss called you and said, "Hey, let's dig into her witchcraft and her odd spiritual beliefs." Where do you think that came from? Originally, do you think that person came up with that, or do you think they were directed to tell you that?
I think that they saw another outlet do that and they said, good idea. It's groupthink in newsrooms. And it was probably CNN. My boss was a fan of CNN, and it was interesting how many of the Fox people, even within Fox News Channel, because I was within Fox Corp, Fox News Channel, Fox local stations, we're all one community. We would all share things with each other behind the scenes and yeah, I had a friend at Fox News who would complain about hating Fox News, wanting to be at ABC. And it was like, what's going on in Fox? Anyway, so my boss would talk a lot about CNN and what they're doing, and we should cover it like them. And so I think that's where she got it. But, you know,
wow. Like maybe not even necessarily agenda driven, but like you said, just groupthink. Just, hey, this is what looks like's working, so we're going to do the same thing.
Yeah, totally. And
you know what's so gross about that? Because here we are 2 years later, and all the lies, all the deception, everything's coming out. And we know now, like, early treatment has been proven to help a lot of people recover. And just saying that, it is still something like Joe Rogan. They're trying to, you know, that whole thing with Spotify, because he had Dr. Peter McCullough on talking about how he's seen very positive effects from early treatment of the disease. But no, we were told, like it happened to my mom. My mom got real sick with COVID, and her doctor said to just go home, and we can't do anything until you reach a point where you need to be hospitalized. And it's like, why, at what level of either government or big pharma have they decided that we're literally going to let people get sick and die before we allow them to partake in any early onset treatment? And that's a dark rabbit hole to go down. But it's no longer like conspiracy theorists. They were really doing this to people.
Yeah.
And that was the very beginning of it. The very beginning, they're like, nope, we can't discuss early treatment. We can't discuss hydroxychloroquine. We can't discuss ivermectin. That's for horses. And if you take that, you're an idiot. And now we look back on it, it's like, oh no, there's a lot of validity to that. But all these media sources and big tech went out of their way to not only like shadow ban or censor, but also discredit.
Yeah.
Like, oh no, those people are idiots if they do that. Let's take their medical license away.
Yeah.
And it's like, we've arrived at a point now. Like, how many times did you hear, oh, are you a doctor? Like, that was like their go-to. If you weren't a doctor, you can't hold an opinion on something. It just seems ridiculous that we allow this narrative to just grow into a wildfire. And anybody that said anything against it was just fucking overran and trampled.
Right. And, you know, when I first covered Dr. Stella Emmanuel using hydroxychloroquine, my inbox flooded with countless people talking about using it as well, having success. In fact, the firefighters union president said that he would give it to his entire staff of firefighters. And that was like their secret protocol. And it was secret because hydroxychloroquine was taboo in the mainstream. And I'm thinking, why is this taboo? Let's shed some more light on this then. And anyway, but I did I was like, dude, I'm normally a crime reporter. I don't know this medical stuff. I have no opinion on hydroxychloroquine, but I just reported that. But I recorded a social media video after covering that, just alerting people that we just witnessed something really unprecedented and alarming, the censorship itself, regardless of what topic it was, the amount of censorship that happened with that one press conference, Stella Emmanuel. And, you know, after that, we saw escalating censorship on countless topics, but that was like the first super big one. And I said, guys, this should never be okay in America, the land of free speech, you know. And by the way, this is what China's been doing to its people for years, and we don't want to be like China.
Yeah,
China's had that kind of censorship in place. I had studied that previously. And so I was just, you know, kind of letting people know, like, this is bad. And so all hell broke loose when I posted that video. Like, my boss was very upset. The gossip sites picked it up and said that me standing for censorship was me pushing fake drugs that don't work. I guess they twisted it. And
so you being anti-censorship was you're helping push a certain drug, huh? That's like, if that's not grasping for fucking straws,
and
what is?
I know, right? Especially when I said in the video, that even if this woman is bad and she's trying to harm people, you don't hide evidence that she's 100%. Done that. You leave that out there and then like, let's go tackle this further and see what she's really up to.
Well, and here's what I've been saying about censorship from the beginning of all this bullshit is like the truth will set you free, right? And if people if they want to lie and they want to be deceitful and they want to manipulate, like that will inevitably shine a spotlight on itself and people will see it for what it is. So we don't need the government and big tech to fucking put blinders on us and only show us certain things because you're trying to protect us. Like we can figure shit out. American people, like it's almost offensive. The American people, like our government, should understand and respect us enough and look at us as critical thinking people, intelligent enough people that give us the information and then people will come to their own conclusions and then the cards will fall where they may based on that. But that's not what they want. They want us in lockstep with this is the narrative, this is the treatment, this is the vaccine you need to get, and on and on and on, right down the step, like right down the line to where if you step outside of that in any capacity, now you're fucking like, I mean, if you don't want to get a vaccine, I'm a white supremacist. You know what I mean? Like that's how far this has gone. But it was incremental. And the most frustrating thing about it is that this has been pushed down our throats by government and big pharma. But a lot of people have they've chosen that to be their team and now they're defending it. And you see it online, like all these big arguments and stuff with people defending this kind of behavior because they believe that that's the correct story. And what they're missing is exactly what you just said. We shouldn't be defending one story over the other story. We should be defending the right to share our opinions. And it's like when you fucking go viral for standing up for a free press, it's just as shocking as me going viral for a police officer saying, I think we need to honor our oath and the Constitution. But those are such like outliers now.
Yeah.
Is that those stories go viral? How the fuck is a reporter saying respect the free press a viral story?
Right.
How the fuck is a police officer saying respect the Constitution a viral story? But that's because it's the exception to the rule now. Everybody is just doing what they're told and falling in line with this narrative that sweeps across all these different professions. And the end result is just shut up, sit down, do what you're told. And for whatever reason, a lot of people are comfortable with that now. And that in itself should fucking scare people, you know?
Yeah, it's a slippery slope we're going down. And I hope people can break out of their groupthink and just really think for themselves about what's really happening. But, you know, that incident where I called it out on social media, that's 2020. Just did an Instagram video saying, guys, this is a bad precedent.
What month was it?
That was July, end of July, 2020.
Okay. So we were a couple months apart.
You were what?
May 2020.
And somehow but that was just the first one. That one went slightly viral, but I stuck with the company and things got worse. That's the thing. And so then I called them out live on TV in 2021.
Oh, okay.
And then that's when it went crazy. But somehow I didn't see yours until after I called out Fox. And then I was like, oh wow. Someone had edited together a video of me and you and some other people.
Yeah, I've seen that.
And that's when I discovered you and I was like, oh wow. Yeah, he's like the police officer version of me. But anyway, so that was like the beginning of the end with Fox in July of 2020. When Fox took this stand against me and said, Ivory, you cannot criticize censorship and support free speech. And I was like, excuse me? Like,
and this is fucking Fox.
Yeah.
Who all you conservatives out there, like, just blindly follow as the gospel. Like, I don't trust any media outlet anymore. You know, just because they put this perception out there as being like a conservative based organization, they're telling their reporters that you can't stand against censorship. Fuck you too, you know?
Right. It was just like chilling to realize that we're supposedly the free press, but we can't criticize censorship. The press is not free in a censored society.
No.
Because in a censored society, you can't go into that shadowy area that's censored. And what if the truth lies there? Mm-hmm. So the press is no longer free. So I took a hard stand against that. I was like, dude, this is where I draw the line. Like, I follow boss's orders so well. I totally respect. I had a great relationship with my boss. I would do whatever she said. But when it came to that, I was like, that's where I cannot proceed any further with you. If this is, I mean, if this is where we part ways, it's where we part ways. And so I stood my ground hard, and my boss hated that I wouldn't just agree with her. And we had phone call after phone call.
Well, and she knew you were right. That's the thing.
Probably. But see, she had her bosses telling her to discipline me. Mm-hmm. And I was like, all right, discipline me if you want. But, you know, this...
That's not going to change my perspective.
Like, this is the free press. You know, we are the free press, and we got to defend against censorship if we are the free press. And
so the initial story that kind of opened your eyes a little bit, you said, was June or July of 2020.
Yeah.
And moving past that, like just back to your day-to-day operations as a reporter, do you get to choose like what stories you focus on or what topics you bring up? Or is that kind of, I mean, how does that even work in the newsroom? Do you go to like a roll call and they're like, hey, Ivory, this is what we want you to focus on this week? Or how does that work?
Yeah, pretty much. Every newsroom's different, but where I was at, they would get together every morning and expect each one of us to pitch original story ideas. And rarely would we even get assigned to what we pitched, because they had the narrative in their head already of what they wanted to go. So, you know, that's what would happen. And especially in the pandemic, it was like you knew what the narrative was in the pandemic, and anything you pitched outside of the narrative, it was like, okay, they're not gonna assign me to this, so why even bother pitching it?
Yeah. I mean, you can only get shot down so many times.
Yeah, I'll just get a target on my back if I keep pitching stories outside of the narrative. So a lot of people don't even pitch facts outside the narrative because they don't want to get a target on their back, because the newsroom is a cult.
It's the same thing in law enforcement. It's like a lot of the people on the ground level, like your patrol level officers, same with you guys, like the actual boots on the ground reporters, it sounds like they knew that this didn't make sense, and they knew that this wasn't the correct way to distribute stories and conduct your behavior as media. But if it threatens your paycheck, or if it might stir or ruffle some feathers, like, just go along to get along. And even though you know in your heart it's not correct, this is what preserves your position with the company, and this is what's going to work towards a promotion. All the bullshit that people focus on, when they're missing that on a foundational level, you are allowing your liberties to slowly, I shouldn't even say slowly, they were rapidly being fucking stripped from us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is really a time in history where American journalists have got to really take a step back and look at what's happening, and look at that subtle fear that they have every day about pitching things outside the narrative, covering things outside the narrative, even being out on the ground, witnessing things outside the narrative, interviewing people who are outside the narrative, and then having that fear strike them and say, I better not let this part make air. I might get a target on my back. And these people need to really search their little souls and say, wait, I'm a part of the problem every time that I self-censor. A lot of these journalists just self-censor. They're so afraid
don't want to rock the boat,
getting that target on their back. Yeah. I know I have right-wing newsroom friends who pretend to be leftists just to try to get their next promotion.
Ugh,
it's incredible.
There's nothing worse. There's nothing worse than that.
It's incredible.
and like not being authentic to who you are to serve the fucking the corruption, because that's what this is. We all see it for what it is. So why would anybody compromise their own integrity, their own values, their own beliefs to serve these people?
Yeah.
You know, but it's a fear-driven narrative is what it is.
Yeah, there's so much fear among so many Americans. And for me, it was like, there came this point where I was like, yeah, I was getting that same twinge too of like, ooh, if I pitch this, there's going to be a target on my back. And I was like, you know what? But wait, I got into journalism to find out what's actually happening on the ground and inform the people and actually answer their questions too, because our inbox and our comments section is a joke. You should see the comment section on Fox's social media. The viewers were just straight up making fun of them because they're so out of tune with the actual the feeling of the average American about all this.
People see it for what it is.
More Americans were starting to be afraid of tyranny stripping away their liberties than of an actual illness.
Of course.
So, and that they were just so out of tune. And I was like, we've got to get back to answering our viewers' questions. And if that puts a target on my back, then my company has a big problem, not me. And I'm gonna confront my company. If every time they dare to put a target on my back, I'm gonna hit that head on. And that's what I started doing. So after summer of 2020,
I already liked you, but now that I'm getting to hear this story firsthand, you're fucking awesome. That's what we needed, you know?
And I really hope that other reporters and newsroom members will do the same. So sure enough, targets start to get on my back as I start to cover what's actually happening and how it's different than what the narrative says. And every time the bosses would confront me about this, I'd say, oh yeah, okay, let's talk about this. This is what's actually happening. And why do you want to hide that? Does that serve our viewers? And we'd get into these heated debates. And there were times I would come away from that phone call with my boss because we weren't allowed to meet in person. So these were all phone calls.
Oh, because it was just too dangerous.
And that was an edict from Lachlan Murdoch at Fox Corp saying, none of you are allowed to meet. Okay. Like Lachlan Murdoch was the most radical pandemic guy. We would get his emails all the time. Like,
I love that you use the word edict.
And so I would come away from those phone calls like, gosh, I just treated my boss like I was her boss. But I was at this point, I was like, I cannot believe the state of journalism right now. And I am not interjecting my politics. I'm talking about actual evidence that we're seeing on the ground that you guys are suppressing. And I want to know why, and I want to know how that serves our viewers.
Yeah. And what would they say to that?
And they're like, they would always make some sort of excuse. It was the most manipulative conversation. It was so frustrating. And my bosses were very protective of their bosses who were making them act this way. And at one point I finally got my bosses to admit, like my two female bosses had gotten on the phone with me about a totally separate subject. And I just interjected this topic of journalism, which they weren't anticipating. I said, hey, by the way, what's really going on with this? You know, we have always gotten along great. Can you just keep it real with me? Why are you putting a hard target on my back when you know I'm the most, frontline fearless reporter you have? And I always, adhere to journalism. And they said, look, Ivory, this is, and I asked, look, this is, we got to put the viewers first and get answers to their questions. And they straight up said, Ivory, it's not about the viewers right now. And, this is what the CEO wants and the general manager wants. And I was like, oh, wow, there it is. I knew it wasn't coming from you guys. It's from your bosses.
So think about that though. As soon as the media is driven by making money and making it a business, and as soon as they are controlled by these I don't know exactly how big pharma is tied to these major media corporations, but now they're telling you how to behave based on a narrative rather than the facts. And it's because damn well they're all in cahoots together, and this is how they're going to push their agenda and how they're going to make money.
Yeah. Well, if you look at it, if you watch TV, the commercial breaks always have Big Pharma.
Of course they do. Yeah.
Yeah.
With a list of 300 things about how this drug, the potential side effects are. And they go down the laundry list of all these terrible things that can happen to you, up and into, including death. But I mean,
yeah. But this,
they're all in fucking bed together.
Right. And there's also commercials from the CDC, FDA, Health and Human Services on the commercial breaks as well, which is really concerning that's government funding coming into the newsroom. And yeah. And so the commercial breaks, it's great that they're being honest and rattling off all the side effects. These newest drugs are too new to have that list yet.
Yeah.
And the most alarming thing to me was when they actually push back and say, we don't, these side effects that are emerging in real time as this experiment is happening live in the American people's bodies. We want you to not talk about it.
Yeah, don't talk about that at all.
And so this, at one point, there were these concerns coming out in the first few months that everyone was getting the shot. And someone decided, I think it was March of 2021, that the narrative would be that so far there were 2 blood clots. And it was pushed out all over national news that 2 people had blood clots from Johnson & Johnson. And I was assigned to that story as well. And so since I was assigned to that story, I was like, well, boss, I just checked with CDC. They have 3,000 people who've died so far after the shot. So I think we should include that if we're talking about side effects.
Yeah, you would think,
And they're like, absolutely not. You are not talking about that, Ivory.
Ivory, the number is 2.
Yeah, two blood clots, and they survived. But 3,000 that died, don't talk about that. And so when you push out this story all over every media outlet saying that 2 people have had blood clots, it leads people to believe that that's the only side effect there's been so far.
Yeah, and then the conclusion they're going to draw is that, it's safe. I can go get it. Yeah. And then they can keep pushing their fucking vaccine and making these big pharma companies rich and rich and richer and richer and richer. Yeah. And it's like, but the thing that you have to wonder is if these companies are saying, hey, just say 2. All right. That, in my opinion, is now an admission of guilt. Like the truth should be able, if you believe in your product and you believe that the mRNA vaccine that was developed actually was good for people and you believed in what it did, you wouldn't have to suppress any data. It's just like with Pfizer. They're like, we don't want to release the data for 75 years. I'm sure you saw that, right?
Yeah, that's very alarming. Yeah.
Well, as soon as you don't want to put the truth out there, that lets us know now you're hiding something. And if you're hiding something, you don't have to hide good. No one has ever hid good from people.
Right.
You know what I mean? You hide fucking nefarious bullshit. And so we now know if you're trying to hide it, it's because you have something to hide and it's negative. If all of their studies came out and showed like overwhelming positive evidence, you'd be able to go online and open it up and download it right now. But the reason that the fact that they want to hide it makes you say, well, if they want to hide it, there's something in there that they don't want us to see. What could that be? Yeah,
and this was so alarming to me. As someone who wanted to think the best of my dream company, I loved Fox Corp. I was so proud to be a part of that company. And by the way, I was working my way up. Fox News was looking at me hard for the national level, and I was really excited about that. And I started to learn my whole company was corrupt. And it's like, wait, the CDC's even being honest about this. They said that there's 3,000 deaths, but now Fox is playing cover, and they want to make it look, make this stuff look perfect. And it was like, guys, it seems like the majority of people are doing fine after the shot. Why can't I just let people know that there is this percentage that's not doing fine, and that's our duty to the viewers.
I would guess that like these real elitist scumbags, they're playing devil's advocate. They would be like, oh, no. Like, we need people to be comfortable taking the shot because we're trying to protect them.
Yeah.
And it's for their good.
No, totally.
And so even if we have to lie to them, it's for their good. And, and as soon as you start to believe anything like that, you got to look at yourself in the mirror and be like, dude, am I still a human being or am I growing into a monster? Because if you have to lie to people for their own good, we have some fucking serious issues that need to be discussed. Yeah,
totally. And the bosses should really look at history, because this is exactly the moves Hitler pulled. Straight up, Hitler censored out the press for the people's own good, because it just seemed there were a little too many tensions. So we don't want competing opinions to escalate. So let's shut down all opposition press, and the only press is the Nazi press.
Jesus.
And he was like, we're only going to do this for like 4 months just to calm things down. Well, the free press never came back until Hitler was defeated. But at one point, and that's early in Hitler's rise to power as chancellor, and it was Hitler, and then the president was still in place, Hindenburg, who was 85 years old, super similar to Joe Biden, just the senile guy who was losing his mind. So Hitler used that to the fact that this guy was losing it. But anyway, the vice chancellor, Hitler was chancellor. The vice chancellor at one point in 1934 was like, Hitler, we have got to stop with this suppressed press. Like, we need the free press back. We need real men to be able to have discussion. If you're going to have any actual loyalty, you need to, give people credit that they can think for themselves and reason out on their own why they want to be on your side, Hitler. And so he gave this speech saying that, telling the public that, the vice chancellor under Hitler. And Hitler was furious. And actually that speech started to get shared everywhere. And Hitler just stamped it out with his censored press. And then that speech calling for free press was part of what led to Hitler executing hundreds of people and leading into him being the official dictator. Just someone taking a stand for free press.
It's so crazy. It's like, it sounds like some crazy movie. It's like, no, that was our world not that long ago. And that's why I say it often on the show is like, I feel like people in the United States have somehow reached this conclusion that, oh no, it's all good here. We're safe. We have security. All the wars happen on the other side of the planet, but over here it's all good. And that kind of just perpetuates the go along to get along mentality that we're seeing of a bunch of Americans. Because I mean, even the world wars, we went to the other side of the world and fought them. Yeah. Now they affected every family in the Industrial Revolution and like Rosie the Riveter and like all of the stuff that did impact the families back here at home. But we weren't outside of Pearl Harbor. Our cities weren't getting bombed. We weren't having to deal with fucking blood and death and chaos on our streets. Our men and women went over there and engaged in that. And then they came home. Yeah. And I feel like that's part of what has just allowed this to grow into a monster is Americans are just too comfortable.
Yeah.
We don't think like, you know what? Like you're making this, who's that crazy Fox reporter who's making comparisons to Hitler? She's crazy, And it's like, no, you're not crazy, because evil men that are power hungry and that are agenda driven, they'll stop at nothing. And we've seen it over and over and over again. And now it's knocking on our doorstep. And some people are still willing to just turn a blind eye to it and be like, no, it's all good. It's not all good.
Yeah, especially when the Department of Justice in this past year is putting out alerts about disinformation as part of possible terrorism threats.
Yeah.
So spreaders of information that the Department of Justice doesn't like, they could be terrorists.
And guess what? As soon as you're labeled a terrorist, you can be locked in a cage without due process.
Yeah.
And they take away your constitutional rights. I mean, there's people still in custody over the January 6th thing. You know? And it's like,
it's horrible.
What the fuck is going on?
And it's like, where is the free press in all this? Like, here we are on the front lines of a very important turning of events in our country where the free press is needed most. And they seem to be silent on this. If anything, they're on the side of the government only.
I hate the government. Why can't everybody just hate the government with me? You know?
Yeah, and it's so crazy. I was just talking to another reporter. She's still within the corporate beast right now. News people reach out to me, and there's a lot that aren't okay. Now, many of them are highly indoctrinated, raging leftists, but others are truth-seeking journalists and who are horrified at what's happening.
And they see what happened to people like you. Just like cops saw what happened to people like me. And some people, unless they have a lot of courage and are willing to say, hey, I'll go fucking broke.
Yeah.
And I'll lose everything to stand on my own integrity. But if you're not willing to do that, it is a scary place. And then you got people who are like, no, dude, I got fucking 3 kids to feed and a mortgage to pay.
Exactly.
Like, I can't lose this. If I lose this, I'm fucked.
So this is what's happening in her newsroom is that there's these anchor women in her newsroom who make a killing. They're the breadwinner of their family. They have a mortgage to pay. Their husband's relying on their salary. And they're reading a teleprompter that's full of propaganda every day. And they don't have the nerve to change the wording in that teleprompter or send an email about why we're misleading the public because they don't want to rock the boat with the chance of losing their job.
Yep. Doesn't surprise me at all. And then in their own minds, they probably say, well, that's not my message. I'm just reading it.
Yeah. You know, well,
like
I'm just
trying to not take ownership of it. And
right.
It's like, no.
I can't make it, I'm probably not making a dent in anything anyway. Right. And so all of these media members together are just really doing a disservice to the public.
So what was the next phase then when you kind of said, hey, this says I'm not part of this propaganda machine and took another stand? Because I mean, you said like you had the first thing in July and then you had some phone calls and some debates where they realized like, okay, Ivory is not falling in line with what we're saying. But what was the point when it's like, all right, I'm fucking blowing the roof off of this shit?
Them literally saying that we can't support free speech was huge for me. But then 2 weeks after that, when they assigned me to cover COVID treatment at a hospital, and I let the word out that doctor was using hydroxychloroquine as well. Like, you guys sent me to this hospital. I'm just going to report the facts on the ground.
Yeah.
Since when am I supposed to self-censor certain things that the hospital's using that you sent me to that hospital? And anyway, they put me on a social media blackout for like 2 months or something after that.
So you couldn't go on your own Instagram or your own, like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, for quite some time, I couldn't post anything on any social media platform. And then after a while, they're like, okay, now you can only post things that we pre-approve. So you send what you want to post to us, and then you can put it up. Yeah, it was so strange. But
I'm surprised it took you as long as you did to tell them to fuck themselves.
Yeah, I was like, you got to be kidding me, you guys. And so then, and this is just reporting what the doctor was actually using. And by the way, the death rates at his hospital were remarkably 2/3 to 3/4 lower death rate than other hospitals. What's this guy using? We should look at everything he's using. And that's what I did. I put out a whole list of what this guy's using. It just happened to be that H word in there too. Oh, and turns out later he was using ivermectin, which is the other big taboo.
Yeah. So
who cares
he's
that
a dummy.
More people are
He's a dummy
living.
that prescribes veterinarian medicine.
Yeah. Never mind that most people survive at his hospital. But let's not explore any connections. So,
see, and this shouldn't just fucking make people upset to hear. Mm-hmm. This should make people furious.
Yeah.
This should make people want to drag these motherfuckers out into the streets and lynch them. Like, our People lost family members. People lost their moms, their grandmothers, because you motherfuckers wouldn't let us openly discuss different treatment options and then let you decide what is best for you and your family and how you want to treat your own physical body. Nope. Can't fucking do that.
Right.
And like people should be outraged by it. And 100%. I'm just not seeing it. Like that should feel for a government or for these massive media outlets or pharmaceutical companies to manipulate people to a point where you're killing us.
Yeah.
And we're just cool with that? Oh, no, they made a mistake. Natural immunity actually is pretty good now. And the CDC said that. Oh, you know what? Natural immunity is actually showing to be better than the vaccine now. It's all good. Well, what about all these fucking athletes that are having heart attacks from myocarditis and shit? Like people should be fucking furious still. Yeah. And this is what I think. And maybe I'm just a fucking lunatic, but this was the roof was about to get blown off the COVID narrative. It's falling apart. And now that's why it's just 100% Russia's invading Ukraine. Look, don't look over here. Russians invading Ukraine. Don't fucking bring up COVID. I guarantee you the newsrooms are like, don't talk about how the vaccine has been kind of a failure. Mm-hmm. Don't talk about how the masks are proven to not work. Mm-hmm. Don't talk about how all of the early treatment is now looking like that's how you save people. Let's just talk about Russia invading Ukraine. And it has to how can people still not have their eyes open to know they're being manipulated?
Yeah. So that was the biggest thing in leaving Fox. I wanted people to know, like, you are being manipulated, and please just take the news with a grain of salt. Yeah, you can see what they're saying, but just don't really go by. And there's probably a lot of information out there that they're hiding from you, because the biggest tool for deception that the news has been using in the pandemic is the tool of omission. Let's just not even talk about this whole swath of things. And that's how we'll deceive people in regards to COVID treatment and in regards to the election. And that's the most crooked place where Fox stands. That's where Fox is the wolf in sheep's clothing, is they have banned talk of our horrendous election and all of the anomalies and fraud. So, all the way up to Fox News, all the way up to Tucker Carlson and Hannity.
Mm-hmm. So when you went nuclear live on the air, tell us about that, because that's the story that everybody needs to hear.
So that was 10 months into this propaganda chaos is when I finally blew the lid off of it. And
is this something that you'd kind of come to terms with yourself? You're like, I can't do this anymore. I'm not going to be a pawn. Or was it kind of spontaneous?
Those ridiculous things the following summer, or the previous summer, I realized I no longer want to be a part of this company. This company is not on the side of the people or the truth. But I couldn't get out of my contract. It's a vicious contract. Most all TV stations put you in, especially Fox Corp. They own everything about you. That's when you sign that contract, you're signing away your freedom. Uh-huh. And that's why they could simply say, you're on a social media blackout. And I had no power to say, no, I'm not. I'm going to post anyway, because they literally own me. They could tell me that. They could do whatever they want.
And then they'll litigate and like take legal action against you.
Yeah. They could fine me like endless amounts. And so same with saying, oh, I'm just going to leave. I'm going to quit. You can't say you're going to quit. You can't, there's nothing.
It's starting to sound like the military.
And you can't, you can't say you want to quit, and you can't criticize them. And I was like, how do I get out of this? So every day for months, I would rack my brain about ways to get out. I talked to multiple attorneys. And finally, I crossed paths with Project Veritas. And they said, I had these recordings. Like when I was confronting my bosses, I was recording. So I had the recording of them saying, like, it's not about the viewers, it's about the CEO and all this. And Project Veritas wanted to air those recordings, but they're like, you should just call it out live on air. And I thought that was just theatrics into, it was unnecessary. But after like a month or so after they told me that, it just dawned on me that actually, that calling it out live on air would be the best thing to do for the viewers. It would let the most viewers know that what's really up. And it would also, I would be calling it out loud enough that it would protect me from Fox. They would be afraid. They'd be afraid to come after me because I'm being so public. So
when the news is airing live, how does that process work? Like, I know if someone says, fuck, you guys have enough of a buffer to like bleep it out.
That's the rumor. There's like a 7-second buffer.
That's what I'm asking. I don't know. I've always heard that. But like when you started talking, was there nothing that they could do? Like,
well, there's nothing they did do. And I guess it all comes down to the control room director who's pushing the buttons and who goes live on air. He can easily cut my feed, but he didn't. And I don't know why.
Do you know that person?
I don't think I've ever met that guy, but he would talk to me in my ear before I would go live.
Okay.
You know, maybe he was on my side. Who knows?
Well, if he didn't cut you, he's either at least willing to let you say your piece, or maybe just didn't put together what was happening in real time either.
Yeah.
You know, because I mean, a lot of jobs is just another day at the office. You know? So what did you say then, and how did you articulate that when you were finally ready to go public?
Well, I was assigned to cover the extreme heat that day in Texas and covering broken air conditionings, which that's a boring story, right? And I was like, that's what I wanted.
I wasn't going to say that, but
yeah, no, that's what I was praying for. I said, God, please send me a boring story that will be, that I can easily distract from to get to the real point. And so I'm in front of an air conditioner, and instead of talking about the air conditioner, the anchor tosses to me live. Instead of talking about the air conditioner, I said right off the top, I was like, I want to let you, the viewers, know that Fox Corp has been muzzling me to keep certain information from you, the viewers. And from what I'm gathering, I'm not the only one being subjected to this. And I'm going to be dropping some recordings with this nonprofit journalism group called Project Veritas.
So did you help Project Veritas kind of be put on the map then? Was that kind of the very beginning of them, or did they already have quite a bit of notoriety?
Well, a lot of people, no, they had quite a bit of notoriety at that point, but a lot of people said that they first heard about Project Veritas from me doing that. So I think doing that helped them grow, but they were already, well respected by a lot of people. And it's because of them that I went so viral, because they had the big following that they had. So they shared my stuff, and then it went global, and it was crazy. And so, I was like, dude, I'm gonna fulfill my assignment today because I'm a loyal Fox employee still. I don't know why, but I guess it's so programmed in me. So I'm just going, because I was like, should I just drop the mic and walk off? I was like, no, I'm gonna finish my report. And so I was like, you can see behind me.
So then you went into the air conditioning store, huh?
You can see they're repairing air conditioning. And then I tossed to a package of news that I had edited that day. I had gone out and filmed air conditioners and interviewed people. So I tossed to that, and there's these recorded interviews about air conditioning. And I'm sitting there like, okay, I'm going to get a call any second from the bosses. Nothing. It comes right back to me on air.
Oh, shit.
I was like, dude, this control room director is crazy. He's putting me back on air. Should I say something more? But I was like, let me just close this out.
Yeah. Okay.
I finished it off. And then shortly after that, I got a call.
They're like, what the fuck was that?
Yeah, because I was supposed to be on air again the next hour, and they're like, you're not on air. Just go home. We're going to call you later. And so then that night I got suspended, and I think the next day I got fired.
Okay. So, man, that fast, huh?
Yeah.
It took them 3 months to fire me.
Yeah. Well, to get officially fired, the snail mail came the following week. So. Yeah.
Okay.
But.
Did anybody have any honest conversations with you, or like did they just kind of cut ties and that was it? That was
that night. the vice president of news called me and was like, what was that all about? You know, why'd you do that? And so I had a heart to heart with her, and I was just like, you know all the reasons, and let me list them again. And we talked about all the propaganda over the past year and all the times that I had tried to get answers from them on why we are hiding certain things from the viewers. And them mentioning that this is about their boss's control. And I was like, Lee, I know this isn't you. You said it's your boss, but I'm not okay with being a part of this. And
man,
she was like, well, thank you for sharing your side. You know, she just stayed very quiet.
She knew you were right, but she couldn't just come out and be like, I know you're right, but I'm just too big of a pussy to take a stand with you, you know?
Yeah, because my bosses are the breadwinning wives with the big money. They've sacrificed their whole lives for this career. They've spent most of their lives away from their children to get to that high point in the newsroom, and they're not about to just throw it out.
Nope. Self-serving. That's what a lot of people are caught up in right now. And people need to realize, like, in the moment, being self-serving, you may be getting your paycheck still, and you may have your nice house, but what that does in the long term is it degrades everything. It degrades the fiber that this country is being held together by. Yeah. And that's serving exactly what we don't want. It's perpetuating the problem, and it's going to make things start to fall apart, and we're seeing it in real time now. Yeah. So I hate this because I feel like we could do a 3-hour episode.
I know, right?
But I saw you check your phone. I just checked
I got to catch my flight.
And I know. And I actually just talked, I was looking at timelines. I was like, she should probably leave around 2:15. And now we're 3 minutes past that.
Yeah.
So let's do a follow-up episode.
Yeah, we'll have to. Well, I'm going to have to come back to Washington State to climb a mountain now. So. And
I got a lot of them. And
perfect.
I can direct you, and I can... Fuck, I'd even climb one with you if you want to do that sometime.
Let's do it. And then we'll finish the podcast then.
Okay. Well, just to wrap up part 1 of the podcast then, where can people find you? Yeah, your YouTube channel, your social media, how to interact with you, and then we'll get you out of here because I know you have a flight to catch. Yeah,
my YouTube channel is just Ivory Hecker on YouTube. I do almost daily like news reports and news analysis there. I covered the COVID quarantine camps that you guys have here in Washington State.
Yeah, I saw that.
I hit the ground. I went to the camp, guys. Check it out on my YouTube. And then, Instagram real.ivory. Search Ivory Hecker on Telegram in case I get deleted elsewhere.
Okay. And send me links. I'll put all that in the show notes so you guys can just scroll down and connect with her. So,
yeah. Oh, and my uncensored news website, ivoryhecker.com. That's everything that YouTube doesn't allow.
Got it. Which is pretty much everything. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for recording this quick episode. Let's get you out of here and make sure you catch your flight.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.